Arc de Triomphe, one of the symbols of Paris, is a tourist attraction admired by millions of tourists walking along the Champs-Élysées. And it was here, almost in the heart of the French capital, that scenes unfortunately well known to the residents of Paris took place. An Islamic immigrant armed with a knife attacked the military police. They reacted in time, opened fire, and shot the attacker. It turned out that he was well known to the police, and not only the French police. Every day, dozens of acts of aggression involving knives take place in France, and these numbers are increasing every year. The attacker who attacked police officers at the Arc de Triomphe in Paris turned out to be an Islamist, already convicted in Belgium for similar acts. This is largely the result of Western countries' inept attempts to build multicultural and multi-ethnic societies. This cannot work in the case of radically foreign cultures, such as Islam, in Western societies. The French feel less and less at home in France. They feel that their civilization is being taken away from them. At their own request, because the left-wing liberal politicians elected by the French are fueling illegal migration. This is the 13th district of Paris, considered to be relatively peaceful. But it was here that a black immigrant attacked bus passengers and the driver, and later the police. And this is how it looks in Paris, Berlin, Brussels, and other cities, where illegal Islamic migrants have been allowed in without control or reflection. These people form separate enclaves. They form groups that do not obey the legal rules that apply and have always applied in Europe. Such examples are everywhere. Look at what is happening in Sweden, where the police are afraid to venture into certain regions. The same is true in France. Go to Paris or other French cities. It is scary to walk there in the evenings. You can lose your health and sometimes even your life. Good luck to anyone who has ridden the French metro in Paris and has not been robbed. Ordinary French people are attacked every day, not only by migrants, but also by militants of the extreme left, who support mass migration. Antifa thugs beat a 23-year-old man to death in Lyon. Women who are expecting an influx of culturally alien newcomers from North Africa and the Middle East are increasingly becoming victims of left-wing attacks. This whole leftist experiment, this leftist social engineering, has led to a kind of catastrophe, a civilizational catastrophe, so to speak, because there are no ideas, there are no real solutions, and there is no sign that this will change. We still have this migration pressure, which has disastrous consequences. In Berlin alone, in 2024, there were over 500,000 crimes, 100,000 more than in Poland, and the German capital has 10 times fewer inhabitants than our country. It is currently one of the most dangerous places in Europe. Berlin is struggling with enormous crime. I myself was a victim of this when I lived in the city. I was the victim of serious crimes 3 times, burglaries and car break-ins. But one thing must be said, that Germany, or rather Berliners, owe this crime rate primarily to foreigners. Suffice it to say that foreigners make up 50% of Berlin's prison population, while only a quarter of Berlin's residents are non-citizens. The open-door policy for Islamic migrants has led to a significant increase in crime wherever it has been introduced. Ordinary people are particularly vulnerable, and aggressive migrants often go unpunished. Another night and another series of Russian drone strikes on Ukrainian cities and energy infrastructure. The attacks show that despite diplomatic talks, the war remains a brutal reality, and Moscow's military pressure is not letting up. At the same time, the West's political offensive continues in Munich. One of the key points of the talks was the meeting between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The aim is to maintain a common line towards Russia and prevent the Kremlin from dragging out the negotiations. Further trilateral negotiations are scheduled to take place in Geneva next week.
The surprise is that Russians changed, the leader of the group. This is a surprise to my mind because they want to postpone the decisions. But it's too maybe I'm pessimistic a little bit, but we count on Americans that we will continue and they will not give Russia to postpone or to say let's begin negotiations from the very, very beginning because we have the new group.
Washington emphasizes that the war must end, but at the same time points to the global mechanisms that continue to sustain it. It is not just about Moscow.
This war has to end. This slaughter has to end. It is, it's almost incomprehensible, the loss of life and the suffering that the Ukrainians are going through, especially as Russia attacks, their energy infrastructure.
NATO assesses that despite the Russian offensive, the Kremlin's strategic situation is not improving. Limited and slow territorial gains come at a heavy cost.
One, we have to realize the Russians are not winning this. As you said, they lost 65,000 people in December and in January. They are not winning this.
Hence, alongside the pressure for a diplomatic end to the war and forcing Moscow to negotiate, another game is being played between the West and Kiev. Today, there is open talk of Ukraine's membership in the European Union, although still without any specifics.
My feeling is that the member states are not ready to give a concrete date. There's a lot of work to be done, but I think the priority, the urgent need to move and to show that Ukraine is.
American diplomacy is also conducting parallel talks with global rivals in an effort to reduce the risk of direct confrontation. The line between pressure and escalation and total war is very thin here. The Kremlin, wanting to save face, may try to raise the stakes in this game.
Their national interest and ours are not aligned, and we owe it to the world to try to manage those as best we can, obviously avoiding conflict, both economic and worse. And so it's important for us to have communications with them in that regard. On areas in which our interests are aligned, I think we can work together to make positive impact on the world, and we seek opportunities to do that with them.
In the coming days, the talks between the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia, scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday in Geneva, will be crucial, with territorial concessions being the main topic of discussion. At the same time, Ukraine is expecting new military and energy aid packages from its European partners before February 24th. Further decisions by the West will depend on the outcome of these talks and the situation on the front lines. The Munich Security Conference is a time for discussions about the future and security of Europe, according to Bloomberg. Behind-the-scenes talks on Europe's nuclear deterrence strategy were held in Munich. The leaders of Germany and France were supposed to discuss this issue. Polish President Karol Nawrocki admitted in an interview with Polsat News that he supports such a solution. I am a great supporter of Poland joining the nuclear project. You're talking about nuclear sharing, and I talk about our own. I am saying, Mr. Editor, that the path to a Polish project to Polish nuclear potential, of course with respect for all international regulations, is the path we should take. Western Europe, which for years spent less than the NATO target of 2% of its GDP on defense, is now talking about the need for nuclear defense. Meanwhile, the Polish right wing has been talking about this necessity for years. Tomasz Sakiewicz, head of TV Republika, has repeatedly called for this. 4 years ago, the former Polish president Andrzej Duda spoke about this in Gazeta Polska. The main problem is that we do not have nuclear weapons. There is no indication that Poland will have them at its disposal in the near future. There is always the potential possibility of participating in the nuclear sharing program. We have discussed with American leaders whether the United States is considering this possibility. The topic is open, says Polish President Andrzej Duda. Nuclear sharing is NATO's nuclear deterrence system. Being covered by it is one thing. On the other hand, Poland could also have its own nuclear security system. Such deterrence is almost a guarantee that an enemy country will not decide to attempt confrontation. We need to work in this direction so that we can start the work. We are a country right now on the border of an armed conflict, and we know what the attitude of the Russian Federation, an aggressive imperial power, is towards Poland. I will not tell you, Mr. Editor, if this will happen or when this will happen. However, if you ask my opinion on this matter, I support building Poland's security even on the basis of nuclear potential. Building a Polish nuclear deterrent program is a challenge facing Poland today. A challenge that will certainly not be easy to achieve without cooperation with the United States. And for that, good cooperation between Washington and Warsaw is essential.